The ISS Prometheus tumbled out of warp, trailing debris and venting atmosphere. On the view screen, the pristine lines of the Lurian dreadnought Valor's Wrath loomed against a backdrop of unfamiliar stars. Captain Ralph Reed coughed, pulling himself upright at the sparking helm controls. Klaxons wailed and red emergency lights flashed. Reed had done the impossible, building an experimental warp drive in secret and jumping to an alien star system in open defiance of the United Earth Council. But now it looked like his gamble might get his crew killed. "Status report," Reed barked. He was a bulldog of a man, stubborn and single-minded. "Hull breach on engineering deck," yelled Amir Qureshi, Reed's long-suffering chief engineer. "We're venting air and coolant." "I've got wounded," called Chen Li, the ship's doctor, from her station. Thomas Vega, the crew's stone-faced security chief, checked the sensor readouts. "That Lurian ship is powering up weapons." Reed's heart hammered, but he forced his features into a confident grin. Humanity's future hinged on this moment. The warp drive had to work. On the Valor's Wrath, Captain Karos laughed as he studied the images of the crippled human vessel. Did the primitives truly believe their pathetic ship was a match for the might of the Lurian Empire? He would seize their crude ship, execute the crew, and present the broken hull to the High Command as a reminder of humanity's place in the galaxy. "Lock tractor beams on that junk heap," Karos ordered. "Let's teach the humans a lesson in humility." But as the tractor beam lanced out, the Prometheus seemed to shudder and blur. Then, impossibly, the human ship accelerated, tearing free of the beam and racing away at unthinkable speed before vanishing in a ripple of warped starlight. Karos stared at the empty screen, shock giving way to a cold dread. Somehow, the humans had technology far beyond what the Lurian Empire believed them capable of, and now that ship was loose in Lurian space. Karos clenched his fists, clamping down on the unease worming through his gut. He had no choice now but to hunt down and destroy that human vessel by any means necessary. The alternatives, humans with superior technology, his own disgrace before the High Command, were unthinkable. The Prometheus raced on, its crew scarcely believing they were still alive. But Reed felt a rising surge of excitement drowning out his fears. The warp drive worked. Humanity had just taken its first step to the stars. And the Lurians had no idea what was coming for them. The Prometheus shuddered as it dropped out of warp at the remote outpost, a half-forgotten relic from the early days of human expansion. Captain Reed leaned over the comms station, his face tight with tension as he hailed the only man he truly trusted. "Drake, it's Reed. We've got a situation out here." The reply came instantly, a familiar gravelly voice filling the bridge. "Ralph, what the hell are you doing this far out?" "No time to explain over comms." Reed glanced at the sensor displays, half expecting the Valor's Wrath to appear at any moment. "I need you at these coordinates yesterday, and bring your Marines." A pause then. "On my way, Drake out." As the Prometheus docked at the outpost, Reed felt a flicker of doubt. Could he really drag Drake into this? The man was like a brother to him, but this warp drive, it changed everything. The airlock hissed open, and Drake strode onto the deck, all coiled power in black combat armor, a cadre of grim-faced Marines at his back. His eyes widened as he took in the battered state of the Prometheus. "Jesus, Ralph, what happened?" "We cracked it, Marcus." Reed's voice was low with tension and awe. "The warp drive. We've got it stabilized, and the Lurians know it." In the cramped ready room, Reed laid it all out, the experimental drive, the disastrous first jump, the Valor's Wrath. Drake listened in silence, his face unreadable. When Reed finished, the Marine stood and paced to the viewport. "This drive," he said finally, "it's not just a scientific marvel. It's a weapon, the ultimate high ground." Reed's mouth tightened. "I didn't build it to start a war." "The war's already here, Ralph." Drake stabbed a finger at the stars. "The Lurians, the Kragoth, a dozen other species who'd eat us alive if they could. This drive is our edge." "And what if it gets out?" Reed demanded. "What if everyone has it? An arms race across the galaxy?" Drake opened his mouth to reply, but alarm klaxons drowned out his words. Reed bolted for the bridge, Drake on his heels. "It's the Valor's Wrath!" Qureshi's hands flew over the controls. They found us! On the display, a rain of energy beams tore into the outpost's meager defenses. The Prometheus shook as the docking clamps disengaged. Get us out of here, Reed dropped into the command chair. Now! The human ship surged forward, weaving through a hail of fire from the Lurian dreadnought. Consoles sparked and crewmen cried out as beams grazed the shields. In the chaos, no one noticed Drake slipping away, back to the airlock. Sir! Chen was pale at her station. The outpost, it's gone. On the screen, the ruins of the outpost drifted in a spreading cloud of debris. No survivors. Reed sagged in his chair, the weight of the dead settling on his shoulders. Then he saw it, a single marine transport, battered but intact, emerging from the wreckage. It angled toward the Prometheus, docking clamps extended. Drake limped onto the bridge minutes later, his armor scorched and dented. He met Reed's gaze, pain and loss and unshakable focus etched in the lines of his face. 19 Marines on that outpost, he said quietly. Good men and women. Reed swallowed. Marcus, I'm so... Don't! Drake's eyes were hard as flint. Just promise me we'll make this count. That drive of yours, we need it. Earth needs it. Reed looked to the stars, the Valor's wrath receding in the distance, and knew there was no going back. The Prometheus was committed now, for better or worse. They raced on into the uncharted void, the weight of the future bearing down on them all. The Prometheus hurtled through the void, its experimental warp drive straining against the laws of physics. In the cramped bridge, Captain Reed gripped the arms of his command chair as another proximity alarm blared. Status on the Valor's wrath? He barked. Thomas Vega's fingers danced across his console. Still in pursuit, sir. Closing fast. Reed's lips pursed. They'd been running for days, pushing the warp drive beyond its design limits. He glanced at Drake, who stood rigid by the tactical station, his face a mask of barely held-back fury. We can't keep this up forever, Ralph, Drake growled. We need to take the fight to them. Before Reed could respond, a violent shudder rocked the ship. Consoles sparked and crewmen were thrown from their stations. What the hell was that? Reed demanded. Amir's voice crackled over the comms, tinged with panic. Warp field destabilizing. We're dropping out of FTL. The starfield on the main view screen smeared and twisted, then snapped back into focus. The Prometheus limped forward on sublight engines, venting plasma from a dozen hull breaches. Multiple contacts, Vega shouted. Lurian ships closing fast. Reed's mind raced. They were outnumbered, outgunned, with nowhere left to run. He opened his mouth to order all hands to battle stations, but the words died in his throat as a massive shadow fell across the bridge. A colossal vessel, easily 10 times the size of the Valor's wrath, materialized above them. Its hull gleamed with an otherworldly iridescence, defying conventional design. Before anyone could react, a shimmering field enveloped the Prometheus. Tractor beam! Qureshi's voice echoed through the ship. We're being pulled in. Reed watched helplessly as the Prometheus was drawn into a cavernous hangar bay. As the ship settled onto the deck with a gentle thud, he saw a contingent of Lurian soldiers forming up outside. At their head stood a towering figure in ornate battle armor, radiating an aura of absolute authority. That's Admiral Zoran Krell, Drake whispered, his face pale. Supreme Commander of the Imperial Fleet. Reed swallowed hard. He'd heard stories of Krell's tactical brilliance, his ruthlessness in battle. Now, face to face with the living legend, Reed felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. Krell's voice boomed through the hangar, amplified by some unseen technology. Captain Reed, I must commend you on giving Captain Caro such a merry chase, but I'm afraid your little adventure ends here. Reed straightened his uniform and stepped toward the airlock. He couldn't see a way out of this, but he'd be damned if he'd cower before this Lurian tyrant. Stay sharp, he muttered to Drake, and whatever happens, don't let them near the warp drive. As the airlock cycled open, Reed steeled himself for the confrontation to come. One way or another, the fate of humanity would be decided here, in the belly of this alien Leviathan. Reed stepped through the airlock, His lips pursed as he faced Admiral Zoran Krell. The Lurian commander towered over him, battle-scarred armor gleaming under the harsh hangar lights. "I won't surrender my ship or crew," Reed stated flatly. Krell's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Your bravery is admirable, if misplaced. But you misunderstand the situation, Captain. This isn't a negotiation." A tremor ran through the deck, and alarms blared throughout the massive vessel. Krell whirled, barking orders into a wrist-mounted communicator. Reed exchanged a puzzled glance with Drake. Suddenly, the hangar bay erupted in chaos. A barrage of energy beams lanced through the space, carving smoldering furrows in the deck. Reed dove for cover as Lurian troops scattered. "Zorgothian attack!" a panicked voice shouted over the comms. Through the shimmering force field at the hangar's mouth, Reed glimpsed sleek warships swarming around the Lurian vessel. Their weapons pummeled the massive ship's shields. In the confusion, Drake seized his chance. He charged forward, tackling the nearest Lurian guard and wrenching away its weapon. Reed followed suit, and soon a firefight erupted in the hangar. "Back to the ship," Reed yelled, laying down cover fire as his crew scrambled for the Prometheus. They barely made it inside before another volley rocked the Lurian vessel. Reed raced for the bridge, shouting orders. "Qureshi, get that warp drive online. We're getting out of here." As the Prometheus's systems hummed to life, a new voice cut through the mayhem. On the main view screen, the stern visage of an alien appeared, reptilian features set in regal finery. "I am King Voskar of the Zorgothian Empire," the figure announced. "Your vessel will power down and prepare for boarding. Resist, and you will be destroyed, along with this Lurian monstrosity." Reed's mind reeled. Out of the frying pan and into the fire, he opened a channel. "This is Captain Reed of the ISS Prometheus. We're not part of this conflict. Let us withdraw and—" "Lies!" Voskar snarled. "Your warp technology. You've been aiding the Crinians against us. Surrender it now or face annihilation." Before Reed could respond, the Lurian flagship shuddered. Huge rents appeared in its hull as Zorgothian weapons found their mark. Reed saw his chance. "Punch it!" he ordered. The Prometheus surged forward, slipping through the disintegrating force field. They burst into open space amid a maelstrom of weapons fire and debris. "Multiple contacts," Vega called out. "Zorgothian warships on intercept course." Reed gripped his chair as the ship bucked and weaved. "Qureshi, we need that warp drive." "It's not fully cycled," the engineer protested. "A jump now could tear us apart." "We'll tear apart if we stay," Reed countered. "Do it." The familiar whine of the warp drive filled the ship. Stars blurred on the display as space itself seemed to stretch. Then, with a lurch that sent everyone sprawling, the Prometheus vanished into the depths of space, leaving the raging battle behind. When the disorientation faded, Reed found himself staring at an unfamiliar starfield. They'd escaped, but to where? And what new dangers awaited them in this distant corner of the galaxy? Reed stared at the unfamiliar starfield, his mind racing. They'd escaped immediate danger, but at what cost? The Prometheus drifted in an unknown sector, battered and low on power. "Damage report," he barked. Qureshi's voice crackled over the comms. "Warp drive's fried, sir. We pushed it too hard. Main power at 30% and falling." Reed tightened fists. "Options?" Drake stepped forward, his face grim. "We need allies, Ralph. Fast." As if in answer, a proximity alert blared. A sleek vessel appeared on sensors, its design unlike anything they'd encountered. "We're being hailed," Vega announced. Reed nodded. "On screen." The view screen flickered to life, revealing an alien with iridescent scales and piercing eyes. "I am Ambassador Zen of the Crinian Collective. We've been monitoring your flight from Lurian and Zorgothian forces. Perhaps we can be of assistance?" Hours later, Reed found himself in a vast chamber aboard the Crinian diplomatic vessel. The air hummed with an otherworldly energy as he faced a council of alien dignitaries. "Your warp drive technology is impressive," Zen said, mandibles clicking. "But it has made you a target. The Zorgothians believe you've been aiding us against them." "Which isn't true," Reed interjected. "No," Zen agreed, but it could be. The implications hung in the air. Reed exchanged glances with Drake, who gave a barely perceptible nod. "What exactly are you proposing?" Reed asked carefully. Zen's eyes glimmered. "An alliance. Your innovations could turn the tide against the Zorgothian threat. In return, we offer sanctuary and resources to repair your ship." Reed considered the offer. It wasn't what they'd set out to do, but their options were limited, and if they could help prevent further destruction like what they'd witnessed at the outpost. "All right," he said finally, "but we have conditions. Our technology isn't to be weaponized. We'll focus on defensive systems only." Zen inclined his head. "Agreed. Welcome to the fight, Captain Reed." Over the next weeks, the Prometheus underwent extensive repairs in a Crinian shipyard. Reed watched from a viewport as Qureshi worked alongside alien engineers, integrating human and Crinian technology. "It's incredible," Qureshi marveled during a break. "Their power distribution systems, the shield harmonics, with a few tweaks from our warp research, we could revolutionize their defenses." Reed nodded, a mix of pride and unease settling in his gut. They were changing the course of an interstellar war, but at what cost? His musings were interrupted by a priority alert. On a nearby screen, he watched as a massive Zorgothian fleet emerged from hyperspace, hammering a Crinian outpost. "New shieldings holding," a Crinian officer reported, "but they're pulling back, regrouping for another assault." Reed's fist clenched. This was only the beginning. In a secure briefing room, Reed and Drake pored over intelligence reports. A hollow display showed a scarred reptilian face, General Makur, newly appointed commander of the Zorgothian offensive. "He's a butcher," Drake growled, "known for targeting civilian population centers." Reed nodded grimly. "Then we need to end this, fast." A chime sounded, and a Crinian aide entered. "Captain Reed, we've received a coded transmission from inside the Zorgothian hierarchy." Reed's eyebrows shot up. "Source?" "Unknown," the aide replied, "but it contains detailed files on King Voskar's mental state. It seems the Zorgothian leader is becoming unstable." A plan began to form in Reed's mind, a dangerous, possibly suicidal plan, but one that could end the war in a single stroke. "Get me Ambassador Zen," he ordered, "and prep the Prometheus for covert operations. We're going to the Zorgothian throne world." Reed's gambit paid off spectacularly. The joint human-Crinian forces, bolstered by their newfound technological edge, tore through Makur's armada like a plasma torch through hull plating. As the dust settled, Reed found himself staring at tactical displays awash with green indicators, system after system falling under their control. "We've got them on the run," Drake said, a fierce grin spreading across his face. "Time to press our advantage." Reed nodded, his mind already racing ahead to the next phase. "Agreed, but we need to strike at the heart of their war machine. Cut off the head of the snake." He called up a holographic display of the Zorgothian Empire. His finger hovered over a pulsing red dot. "Zarga Prime, their primary shipyard and resupply hub. If we can take it out..." "We cripple their entire fleet," Qureshi finished, eyes widening. Reed outlined his plan, a stealth mission to infiltrate and sabotage the shipyards, while the bulk of the Crinian fleet launched an all-out assault on Zana Force as a diversion. It was audacious, perhaps even reckless, but it was their best shot at ending this war decisively. Ambassador Zen's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of excitement Reed had learned. "A bold strategy, Captain, but how will you get past their defenses?" Reed's lips curled into a grim smile. "With a little help from our inside source." Hours later, Reed stood on the bridge of the Prometheus as they approached Zarga Prime. The massive shipyards loomed before them, a sprawling network of construction docks and supply depots. "Transmission incoming," Vega reported. "It's Princess Zara." The view screen flickered to life, revealing the face of their unlikely Zorgothian ally. "Captain Reed, my false surrender broadcast is away. My father's ego won't let him resist the chance to crush me personally." Reed nodded. "Good work, Your Highness. We're initiating our approach now." The Prometheus glided forward, masquerading as a supply convoy. Reed's pulse quickened as they passed through the outer security perimeter. So far, so good. Docking procedure initiated, Qureshi reported. As the ship settled into its berth, Reed turned to his assembled strike team. Remember, our window is limited. Plant the viruses, corrupt their systems, and get out. Any questions? Drake checked his weapon, a prototype based on Crinian tech. Just one. When do we start? Reed's answer was cut off by the sound of docking clamps engaging. Now! They moved swiftly through the shipyard's corridors, Zara's inside intelligence proving invaluable. Within minutes, they reached the central manufacturing hub. Qureshi's fingers flew across his datapad, interfacing with the Zorgothian systems. Initiating virus upload. Now. Around them, the shipyard's rhythmic hum began to falter. Production lines ground to a halt. Alarms blared as logic bombs detonated in the computer networks. Time to go, Reed ordered. They fought their way back to the Prometheus, the confusion of the sabotage masking their escape. As they broke free of the shipyard's gravitational field, Reed opened a channel to the Crinian fleet. Phase 1 complete, he reported. How goes the assault on Zana 4? Zen's voice crackled through the comms. Better than anticipated, Captain. Voskar's forces are in disarray. His flagship, the Dominion, has fled the battle. Reed allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The tide had turned. Victory was within reach, but he knew better than to celebrate prematurely. Stay alert, he cautioned. A cornered animal is at its most dangerous, and Voskar isn't finished yet. As if to punctuate his words, a priority alert flashed on the main display. Reports were flooding in from across Zorgothian space. Planets surrendering, fleets defecting. The Empire was crumbling. But at its center, on the Zorgothian homeworld, King Voskar was gathering his remaining loyalists for a final desperate stand. Reed's teeth gritted in persistence. One last push and this war would be over. He turned to his crew, seeing the same grit mirrored in their eyes. Plot a course for the Zorgothian homeworld, he ordered. It's time to end this. Reed's voice rang out across the Prometheus's bridge. All hands, battle stations, we're about to enter Zorgothian space. The ship lurched as it dropped out of warp, the view screen filling with the sight of a massive planetary defense grid surrounding the Zorgothian homeworld. Dozens of warships formed a protective sphere around the planet, their weapon systems primed and ready. Incoming transmission from Ambassador Zen, Vega reported. The Crinian's face appeared on the main display. Captain Reed, our fleets are in position. We await your signal to begin the assault. Reed nodded grimly. Understood, Ambassador. Commence operation in 3, 2, 1, now. The space around them erupted in a dazzling light show as hundreds of Allied ships poured out of warp. Crinian cruisers, human frigates, and even a contingent of Lurian battleships joined the fray. The Zorgothian defenses responded immediately, filling the void with a barrage of energy weapons and missiles. Shields holding at 82%, Qureshi called out. But those orbital batteries are giving us hell. Reed gripped his chair as the ship rocked under another impact. Vega, target those batteries. Qureshi, divert all non-essential power to forward shields. As the battle raged, a priority alert flashed on Reed's console. It was a coded message from Princess Zara. Captain, her holographic form flickered to life. I've transmitted the capital's defense schematics to your tactical officer. There's a weakness in the southeastern quadrant, a blind spot in their sensor grid. Drake leaned in, studying the data. She's right. If we can punch through there, we might be able to deploy ground forces. Reed's mind raced, formulating a plan. Zen, are you seeing this? The Crinian ambassador nodded. Indeed, we're repositioning our assault carriers now. Good, Reed replied. We'll provide cover fire. All ships concentrate on that southeastern corridor. The Allied fleets surged forward, focusing their firepower on the designated area. Zorgothian ships scrambled to plug the gap, but it was too late. A wave of dropships and troop transports broke through, descending toward the planet's surface. Suddenly, the ship's sensors blared a warning. Multiple energy signatures detected on the planet, Vega shouted. They're powering up something big. Reed's blood ran cold as he realized what was happening. It's Voskar. He's activating some kind of superweapon. The comms crackled to life with Zara's frantic voice. Reed, my father's lost his mind. He's going to destroy the entire planet. Without hesitation, Reed barked out orders. Qureshi, prep a shuttle. Drake, you're with me. We're going planetside. As they raced to the hangar bay, Reed's mind whirled with the enormity of the situation. They had come so far, fought so hard. He couldn't let it end like this. Whatever Voskar had planned, they had to stop it, or everything they'd fought for would be lost. The shuttle rocketed through the atmosphere, dodging anti-aircraft fire as they approached the looming spires of the Zorgothian royal palace. Reed could only hope they weren't too late. Reed's shuttle touched down in the smoldering ruins of the Zorgothian capital. Smoke billowed from toppled buildings as he and Drake sprinted towards the looming silhouette of Voskar's palace. Life signs? Reed barked into his comm. Multiple readings, Qureshi's voice crackled back. But there's massive interference. Be careful, Captain. They rounded a corner and froze. The palace courtyard was a battlefield. Zorgothian loyalists clashed with rebel forces, energy weapons scorching the air. At the center stood King Voskar, his scales gleaming with an unnatural light as he manipulated a pulsing orb of energy. The weapon, Drake breathed. Reed's mind raced. They needed to neutralize that device, but fighting through the melee would take too long. His eyes darted to a nearby hover transport. Cover me, he ordered, dashing towards the vehicle. Drake laid down suppressing fire as Reed commandeered the transport. He gunned the engines, rocketing over the heads of startled combatants. Voskar's eyes widened as Reed bore down on him. At the last second, Reed leapt from the transport. It slammed into Voskar, sending the Zorgothian king sprawling. The energy orb flew from his grasp, skittering across the ground. Reed scrambled for the device, but Voskar was faster. The Zorgothian's claws closed around it, triumph gleaming in his eyes. You're too late, human, Voskar snarled. This world will burn, and from its ashes a new Zorgothian empire will... His words cut off as a blast of energy struck him squarely in the chest. Voskar crumpled, the orb rolling from his lifeless fingers. Reed spun to see Princess Zara lowering a still-smoking weapon. Her eyes met his, filled with a mix of sorrow and steely perseverance. It had to be done, she said simply. In the days that followed, Reed watched as Zara worked tirelessly to restore order. The princess, now queen, proved to be a skilled diplomat, navigating the complex web of Zorgothian politics with grace and dedication. But peace remained fragile. General Thrax, a hardline warlord, refused to accept Zorgothian surrender. His renegade fleet struck at newly established outposts, threatening to reignite the conflict. Reed found Zara in the war room, poring over tactical displays. Her mandibles clicked in agitation as she studied the latest attack reports. We need a bold move, Reed said, leaning over the holographic map. Something to show your people, and Thrax, that this new government means business. Zara's eyes glinted. What did you have in mind, Captain? Reed outlined his plan. A heavily armed convoy, escorted by Crinian warships, would push deep into Zorgothian space. They'd deliver aid to war-torn worlds, demonstrating the new regime's commitment to its people while projecting strength against Thrax's forces. As the massive fleet assembled, Reed stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, watching supply ships load their precious cargo. The comms chirped, and Ambassador Zen's face appeared on the interface. A daring strategy, Captain, the Crinian said. Let us hope it succeeds, for all our sakes. Reed nodded grimly. Convoy status? All ships reporting ready, Vega replied. Then let's move out. The fleet jumped to warp, stars streaking past as they pushed into the heart of Zorgothian territory. Reed's fingers drummed against his chair arm, tension coiling in his gut. He knew Thrax wouldn't let this intrusion go unanswered. Sure enough, as they approached the Karasi Nebula, proximity alarms blared. Multiple contacts, Vega shouted. Thrax's ships, dead ahead. The view screen filled with the intimidating sight of Thrax's flagship, the dreadnought Scourge, its experimental plasma cannons glowing with nearly unleashed energy. "All ships, combat positions," Reed ordered. "Protect those transports at all costs." The space around them erupted in weapons fire as Thrax's vessels tore into the convoy. Reed's innovative shield modifications held, but he could see the unarmed transport's defenses beginning to buckle under the assault. Just as hope began to fade, new contacts appeared on sensors. "Sir," Vega called out, "it's Queen Zara. She's brought the Zorgothian defense fleet." Reed allowed himself a small smile as Zara's loyalist ships joined the fray. The battle hung in the balance, neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. Suddenly, the Scourge broke through their lines, its massive cannons training on Reed's position. He gripped his chair as the Dreadnought's weapons cycled up, prepared to unleash their full fury. "Qureshi," Reed barked. "Dump the oxidized debris from Cargo Hold 3. Now!" A cloud of superheated particles erupted from the Prometheus, momentarily blinding the Scourge's targeting systems. In that instant of confusion, Zara's fleet struck. Concentrated fire lashed out, tearing through the Dreadnought's weakened shields. On the main view screen, Reed watched as Thrax's mighty flagship began to list, venting atmosphere and debris. A small shape detached, an escape pod. "Tractor beam," Reed ordered. "Let's reel in our prize." As Thrax was brought aboard in restraints, Reed studied the fallen warlord. Despite his defeat, there was still a fire in those reptilian eyes. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Even in defeat, the Zorgothian warlord radiated danger. Reed turned to Zara. "What now?" The Zorgothian queen's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "We rebuild, we heal, and we create a galaxy where conflict like this can never happen again." Years passed. The scars of war faded, replaced by unprecedented cooperation between species. Reed watched with pride as the Prometheus, once derided as a primitive human vessel, became a symbol of unity and innovation. On the bridge of his ship, now gleaming with upgrades born from a fusion of technologies, Reed received a priority transmission. Ambassador Zen's hologram materialized. "Captain Reed," the Crinian's tone was grave, "your presence is requested on Novus Prime. The Interstellar Council of Unified Species convenes in 3 standard days." Reed's eyebrows rose. "The Council? I'm honored, but—" Zen cut him off. "This isn't a social call, James. We need you. Reports from the Outer Rim." The ambassador hesitated. "Something's happening on Helios colony. Something bad." As Reed digested this, alarms blared. Vega's voice rang out, tight with urgency. "Captain, emergency transmission from Helios colony." The view screen flickered to life, showing chaos. Colonists writhed in agony, their bodies contorting unnaturally. A haggard medic appeared. "This is Dr. Alera of Helios colony. We're under attack by some kind of bioweapon. It's like nothing we've ever seen. Please, we need—" The transmission cut off abruptly. Reed's blood ran cold. "Set course for Helios. Maximum warp." The Prometheus streaked through space, but even at top speed, they arrived too late. The colony was silent, its inhabitants transformed into grotesque, mutated husks. As Reed's team collected samples in sealed containment units, a chilling realization struck. He recognized the bioweapon's signature. "This is Zorgothian technology," he muttered. "But who could have—" His eyes widened as the pieces fell into place. General Thrax, the warlord's escape pod, had never been found. Back aboard the Prometheus, Reed convened an emergency meeting. Holograms of Zara and Zen flickered to life alongside his crew. "The situation is dire," Zara said, her usual composure shaken. "This bioweapon, it's an abomination, a perversion of my people's most advanced research." Zen nodded grimly. "Our scientists are working around the clock, but we need more data. The key to a cure may lie in the Viridian asteroid belt." "That's Thrax's territory now," Drake warned. "He's turned it into a fortress." Reed's eyebrows furrowed. "Then that's where we're going. Prep for immediate departure." The Prometheus approached the Viridian belt cautiously, its sensors probing the debris field. Suddenly, alarms blared. Multiple contacts, Vega shouted. Thrax's fleet, dead ahead. The view screen filled with enemy ships, their weapons already charging. At their center loomed a massive vessel, Thrax's new flagship. All hands, battle stations, Reed ordered. Evasive maneuvers. The Prometheus dove and weaved through the asteroid field, energy beams sizzling past. But Thrax had prepared well. Explosions rocked the ship as his forces closed in. Shields at 30%, Qureshi called out. We can't take much more of this. Reed's mind raced. They needed those resources. But at this rate, they'd be destroyed before... A new voice crackled over the comms. Prometheus, this is Queen Zara. Cavalry has arrived. A Zorgothian battle group dropped out of warp, their weapons blazing. Thrax's forces scattered, caught between two fires. We'll hold them off, Zara's voice rang with grit. Get what you need and go. As the battle raged around them, Reed led a team to the surface of a mineral-rich asteroid. They worked feverishly, gathering samples while dodging stray weapons fire. Aboard the Prometheus, Drake coordinated the defense. A lucky shot from Thrax's flagship struck their primary shield generator. Breach on deck 3, Vega shouted. We've got boarders. Thrax's troops poured through the opening, overwhelming security teams. Drake fought desperately, his energy pistol dropping enemies left and right. But they kept coming. Just as all seemed lost, Reed's team returned. The captain himself led the counterattack, driving the invaders back. We've got what we came for, Reed said, breathing heavily. Let's get out of here. The Prometheus limped away from the battlefield, its hull scarred and smoking. In sickbay, Reed surveyed the cost of their victory. Too many wounded, too many lost. But they had their prize, the key to developing a cure. Now they just needed time. Time they didn't have. Captain, Vega's voice came over the intercom. We're receiving a distress call from Queen Zara's ship. Reed's heart sank as he raced to the bridge. On the screen, he saw Zara's vessel, crippled and drifting, and beside it, Thrax's menacing flagship. The Zorgothian warlord's face appeared, triumph gleaming in his eyes. Hello, Captain Reed. I believe I have something of yours. The transmission cut off, leaving Reed staring at the stars. His fists clenched as he realized the true scope of Thrax's plan. The bioweapon. The Interstellar Council. This was only the beginning. Reed's mind raced as the transmission cut off. Thrax had Zara, the bioweapon was in play, and the Interstellar Council meeting loomed, a perfect target for mass devastation. All ahead full, Reed ordered, his voice tight. We're going after them. The Prometheus surged forward, its engines straining. Reed assembled an elite strike team, briefing them as they approached Thrax's fortified base. This is a rescue and containment mission, he said, checking the seal on his combat suit. We get Zara, we neutralize that bioweapon. Failure is not an option. They breached the base's outer defenses in a hail of weapons fire. Alarms blared as Reed led the charge, his team moving with practiced precision through winding corridors. This way, Vega called out, her sensors locked onto Zorgothian life signs. They burst into the bioweapons lab, only to find chaos. Zara lay crumpled on the floor, her scales pale and breathing labored. Thrax stood over her, a cruel smile twisting his features. Too late, human, the general sneered. My plan is already in motion. Reed's blood ran cold as he saw the empty canisters, realization dawning. The summit? Yes, Thrax gloated. Every delegate will die screaming. Unity will crumble, and from the ashes... His words cut off as Reed's team opened fire. Thrax's guards returned the assault, turning the lab into a war zone. Equipment shattered, alarms shrieked, and the acrid smell of weapons discharge filled the air. Reed fought his way to Zara's side, dragging her to cover. Stay with me, he urged, applying Medigel to her wounds. The Queen's eyes flickered open, unfocused. Reed, you must stop him, at any cost. I will, Reed promised. Just hold on. But even as he spoke, he saw the light fading from Zara's eyes. With a final, shuddering breath, she went still. Grief and rage warred within Reed. He turned back to the battle, his face a mask of relentless drive. "Vega," he shouted over the din, "override the containment protocols, vent this entire section." "But sir," Vega protested, "that'll kill everyone." "Do it," Reed ordered. "We can't risk that bioweapon spreading further." Vega hesitated for a split second, then complied. Warning klaxons sounded as the lab's atmosphere began to evacuate. "All team members, activate mag boots," Reed commanded. The decompression was violent and chaotic. Bodies and debris were sucked towards the breach. Reed watched as Thrax and his men were pulled into the void, their screams silenced by the vacuum of space. In the aftermath, Reed surveyed the destruction. His team had suffered casualties, and Zara, he closed his eyes. Pain etched across his features. "Sir?" Vega's voice crackled over the comms. "We're picking up massive energy signatures. Thrax's shipyards are powering up." Reed's eyes snapped open. The fight wasn't over. "Transmit a warning to the Allied fleet," he ordered. "Tell them to target those shipyards. We can't let a single bioweapon-equipped ship launch." As the battle raged outside, Reed formulated a desperate plan. "Prep the slipstream drive," he told Vega. "We're going to punch straight through their defenses and deliver a little surprise to Thrax's flagship." The Prometheus streaked through the chaos of combat, energy beams and missiles crisscrossing the void around them. With a burst of impossible speed, they phased through the flagship's shields, emerging inside its defensive perimeter. "Now!" Reed shouted. A data packet burst from the Prometheus, carrying a vicious computer virus. Thrax's systems began to fail, leaving the massive ship vulnerable. Reed's strike team boarded, fighting their way to the bridge. There they found Thrax, his scales scorched and eyes blazing with hatred. "You're finished," Reed said, leveling his weapon at the general. Thrax snarled and lunged. The two grappled, trading vicious blows as the bridge burned around them. Reed felt ribs crack under Thrax's powerful strikes, but he fought on, driven by the memory of Zara's final words. With a desperate surge of strength, Reed pinned Thrax to the ground. The Zorgothian general thrashed and cursed, but Reed held firm. "This ends now," Reed growled. He dragged Thrax to the nearest airlock. With Zara's face flashing through his mind, Reed sealed the traitor inside and punched the eject command. Thrax's scream was cut short as the airlock opened, casting him into the lifeless void. Reed staggered back to the Prometheus, his body aching and spirit heavy. As his ship disengaged from the crippled flagship, he watched the Allied fleet finish their grim work. The shipyards erupted in silent explosions, taking Thrax's bioweapons with them. In the quiet of his quarters, Reed composed a message. He attached all the data they'd gathered on the bioweapon, then transmitted it to every council world. No more secrets, no more weapons that could shatter everything they'd built. As the Prometheus limped home, Reed stood at the viewport staring at the stars. He'd won, but the cost had been far too high.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.